Cut downs are coming, but the Chiefs are going to have the best 53-man roster in the AFC West, and that is clear today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. Right now, through September 22nd, you can still get all the $5 deals that you want, and you're going to get a 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV. Check it out at FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL. We use that. I certainly do, and I think you guys will dig it. We have a lot of waiting to do, and in that time, we are taking stock. This is Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. Let me see if I can get my thumb pointed that way. Okay. Check out Chiefs Corner for all that he's doing and breaking down not only the roster, but the cap situation and the coming Creed Humphrey details. A lot to cover there. I'm Ryan Tracy from NFL33.com, where I run down the rest of the league along with RGR Football, an hour take on the Kansas City Chiefs. And then you can check out Rogue APC if you want all the athleticism for everyone all the time. Check us out and make sure you sub to those Substacks and get into it. Thanks for making us your first listen. We appreciate it. Make another NFC, AFC, anything NFL show your next listen here on Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every single day here on YouTube, where you can like and sub, and on Spotify and Apple Music, wherever you want to get a free show on audio, you can get us 5 days a week plus. And for our super, super serious fans that want every little detail, the locos, we call them, are over on the text line at 816-357-8781 for breaking news and that much more. We have to get into what are the trades that could help this team prepare for the 3-peat run. That's coming up later in the show. There are some roster cuts. They're going to hurt, and they're likely going to lose some of these guys. Who is that, and what does it mean for the long term? But we start. AFC West, 8 years in a row, the Chiefs have dominated. This 53-man, no matter what happens to it, is going to be the best roster in this division. It's not going to be close. It starts at the top with Patrick Mahomes, and it goes down to, I think, a receiver core that could probably have a couple guys get cut and could start for other teams in this division. It's very, very clear to me. We're going to have a great show with all the division hosts coming up for you here on Locked On. But for me today, it's just not much of an argument. Do you see anybody that can contend with the Chiefs?
Well, I think there's always going to be questions whether or not there's going to be a roster in the AFC West that can contend with the Chiefs. But to me, it goes beyond just the roster. I mean, you look at the coaching staff. I don't think that there's a coaching staff that can touch the Kansas City Chiefs right now. That's what it comes down to for me. Is you look at the roster and you look at the coaching staff, and there are questions on every team right now. The Chiefs' biggest questions, I think, are backup defensive ends. There's questions that maybe corner too. I think they have talent at corner too. If they get an injury at defensive end, that's going to be a problem. But you're still in a situation where you have Chris Jones who can play outside. But then you start looking at some of these other teams. I mean, you look at the Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah, okay, you have Gardner Minshew as your starting quarterback. Are you really going to tell me that's going to be able to compete in the West? I don't see it. And they have a questionable coaching staff. Not saying that we know what Antonio Pierce is going to do, but I don't think it's going to be something that's going to get them near the top of the AFC West at this point. Bo Nix in Denver is going to be a question. Can he be a good QB? We'll see. He has talent, don't get me wrong, and he's got a great coach. But can they, move forward and can they be successful? Their wide receiver core isn't great, and he's going to have to be able to elevate. Obviously, they have Sutton, but they got rid of Judy, so we'll see if they're able to do that. And then you get to Los Angeles, and they're trying to go back to a running style of offense. I mean, look at their top wide receiver. Is it Ladd McConkey right now? Is it Josh Palmer?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes, it is.
no, I understand, but like Quentin Johnston is their number one pick from last year, and I don't even know that you could really feel good about him being even a top 3 wide receiver with the way he played last year and what you've seen at training camp at times. So you have severe issues on all these teams. I'm not saying that they can't figure things out, and I'm not saying that some of these coaches, I think Peyton is a good coach. Harbaugh was a good coach. The question is it going to be able to acclimate to the NFL game again, going back to a running style offense? I don't see it in today's NFL. That could be successful before, But the other problem that you have in LA is the coach really going to fit what the QB does best, which is air the ball out? That doesn't seem like a great fit to me.
Agreed. A lot of people tell you Quentin Johnson is having some kind of surge. I'll believe it when I see it on the field. I think it's going to be hardest for Greg Roman out there in Los Angeles to deal with run. Wait, I don't get to throw the ball. And I could see some strife coming there. For me, the second best coaching staff in this division is in Denver, in my opinion, with Sean Payton, Joe Lombardi on the offensive side, and Vance Joseph on the defensive side.
Yep.
And not to discount the assistants, but it starts with the coordinators. So I feel like that's going to be the thing that differentiates them and honestly gives them a little bit more of a leg up for competing for second place in this division.
Well, and second place is what they're going to be competing for. If the Chiefs stay healthy, this is their division to lose. And I feel comfortable saying that. I don't think that you're going to be in a situation where this team is going to falter. You have a better offense than you had last year. This defense could take a couple of steps back and still be good enough to be probably top 15. And I think you put that together with Patrick Mahomes and an offense that should be able to pass the ball much more efficiently and much more effectively. I think he's in his average game in his career is throwing for just over 300 yards. That changes what you're able to do on offense. That changes how you're able to attack defenses. That changes how defenses have to try to attack you. And you now finally have two guys that can go and get the deep ball. And I know Brown is out right now, but I still think that once he comes back in week 2, week 3, whenever he's back, that's going to open up a ton of space underneath, along with Xavier Worthy, who showed that he isn't just a deep threat. Like, don't get me wrong, he is a deep threat, but some of his routes are going to be underneath routes that he's going to be able to make extra yardage because of his speed, and he's going to beat people to the angles.
Yeah, he's a crossing threat. He's a drag threat. He's a threat. So let's get after it and use it. The question is going to be who's going to stop him. How are the Chiefs going to round out the roster? Because there's going to be a couple decisions coming, especially on the defensive side, that are going to hurt them. That's coming up next. When you're hiring for a small business, you want to find the quality professionals with the right fit for the right role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. It has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team. I'm always looking at LinkedIn. It isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you find professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively looking or searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. It goes down the easiest way to post your job for free is on LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Make sure that you checked out Locked On Fantasy Football. If you need that edge for your drafts, like I do for mine, Vinny Iyer is going to hook you up. Make sure you subscribe to that here on Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. Every single day is my new favorite slogan. We've heard it for a number of years, but it really comes down to everything that you do every single day costs or gains for this team. And that's where I think, especially the teams in the AFC West, obviously the Chiefs being 32nd in the waiver wire, there is a significant chance that any roster cut that you make that you're going to lose that player and not be able to get them back to the practice squad. So I really am concerned about a couple of things. First and foremost, the corner depth. And secondly, the wide receiver depth. Which one is more likely to you to get somebody robbed off of getting to the practice squad?
I would say corner. They have a ton of talent at that position, and I'm not exactly sure how they're going to keep it all. We will see whether or not that ends up being the case, but I would think it's going to be the corner room. There's always a possibility that you see a guy like Kadarius Toney get cut from the Chiefs, but I don't. The thing that I think is going to make him hard to pick up for somebody is I don't expect him to be a guy that is going to be picked up on the waiver wire, mainly because of the contract. He's guaranteed $2.5 million. If somebody picks it up, they're going to be on the hook for that contract. I would expect that it's going to be he clears waivers and signs with another team would be my guess. And I'm not so sure Kansas City would want him back on the practice squad to begin with, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, I think there might be a couple of cap wealthy teams that might be like, 2.5, we can deal with that, just to try to get some spark out of them. But just, buyer beware on what you're dealing with in the headspace to try to get that done.
The problem with that for me is he came to a team that has an extremely player-friendly head coach and can't make it work. Like, I get what you're saying, but Andy Reid is known as one of the best player-type head coaches in the NFL, and if he can't get it to work, that's a pretty dire thing to say about a player.
Yeah, and that's true, as well as a very strong locker room in future Hall of Famers Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, as well as Chris Jones. Not that Chris can't get there, but I'm not ready to call him that yet. But that's a strong trio. Some teams have only one leader. So the question is somebody willing to take the chance in the first place? I think the other thing that I'm concerned about is the depth at defensive tackle. And whoever you cut there, of the top 3 backups, and in my mind, if you're taking your top 4 players, they all have experience. So it's Dickerson, Farrell, and Lovett that are likely going to be cuts that you're trying to get to the practice squad. My concern is that one or all of them could draw serious interest on the waiver wire and that you may end up losing them. If that factors into it, I have to think that Dickerson's probably the most likely guy to get put onto the 53. Where are you at today?
Well, Dickerson wouldn't even go to waiver wire, I don't believe. He's a veteran, isn't he? So
I don't know if he has 4 vested years. That was my question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he does either. I thought he did. I thought that's what happened last year is he ended up getting cut and was a guy that they were able to bring back. Okay.
Is Farrell more likely to get picked up, given that he's got some film, but he hasn't produced at a level that maybe you expect, whereas there's probably more excitement and obviously a lot more upside in terms of like runway for Lovett?
Yeah, Dickerson actually did have 5 years, so he'd be somebody that would be cut and would be available to sign with anybody. Farrell, whether or not he actually is able to make it through the waiver wire, we'll see. I don't think that they're going to put him on the waiver wire. I think he played ahead of Dickerson. I think they're going to keep 5, and I think he'll be on the roster. They traded something for him last year, and they like the size. And you don't find guys his size that can play and run stuff. And I'm not saying he's great, but they're definitely going to need it at times this year. So I expect him to stick. Whether or not he's available, I mean, if he becomes available, I think somebody's going to pick him up just because it's a cheap deal and he's a young player and you're going to feel like you can maybe get something there. The big thing to me is when you start looking at some of the positions that they have to cut, you start looking at the premium positions. We already talked about corner. I don't really feel like they have an edge that they would have to worry about because I don't think they have the depth there to have to worry about it. But you start getting in the other premium positions, offensive tackle. I still don't think that you get a guy like Driscoll through the practice squad. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but we've talked about it several times. The offensive line depth is an issue across the NFL, and people are going to look at that and say, okay, well, we saw him get out in space and do something that other teams can't do. We have a need for an offensive tackle in the next couple of years. Maybe they'll take a look at that. We'll see.
Yeah, I would say the same thing for Hansen and certainly for Norzad as well. So it's the negatives they're kind of forcing that decision, I think, right now for that particular group. On the flip side, though, I do think a cut by another team that could help them is if there is a pass rusher they feel can walk in and be somebody that can attack the passer with speed. I don't know who that's going to be. The Jets come to mind of having quite a deep group there, a couple of guys that I'm not sure are going to work out, but I think that's one of the target points for the Chiefs in the waiver wire cuts to make sure that they're looking at it. Yeah,
and the biggest question, and I know we'll talk about this a little bit more, I'm wondering if you're looking at that type of position and saying you can't just wait for the waiver wire, considering they're at 32. I think if you think somebody's going to get cut that you want as a defensive end, I think you're going to have to make a trade. And I know we'll talk about those here in a little bit on the next segment, but that specific position in sitting at 32, that makes it very hard. When you start looking at the other guys, there's questions. What are they going to do at running back? And right now, that's still up in the air. Is running back going to be a position that they look to add somebody? Because you could say that there's maybe People that don't like Deneric Prince, I think the Chiefs feel pretty good about what they have in Prince, but we'll see if he ends up being on the roster, and we still don't know what they're doing with Clyde. So lots of different cuts that could come at different positions. I still think, and one of the things that actually we found out today, Jody Fortson got cut from Miami, which was kind of surprising. Not sure that really affects Kansas City that much, but a little surprising nonetheless.
Yeah, and I feel for Jody Fortson. I do think he has, if he can stay healthy, somewhere he can play in this league. I'm not terribly surprised with Miami because I want to say that because of Tyreek and Waddle in particular and the speed of their run game, I don't think running through the tight end is what that offense is meant to do. So the fit was always a question to me, but certainly he'd be a candidate to come back on the practice squad. I'm sure they'd consider having him. I'm sure he'd love to be here as well. But it does come to, if you want to increase the 53-man roster, better run for the three-peat, it does come down to the trades. I have one target in particular that I'm interested in, and I'm interested to see if you are. We're going to get to that coming up next. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now they have a chance for you to do exactly what I do every single week. They have something a little bit different for you right now. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube base plan account, all you got to do is watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. No problem. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Folks, make sure you like and sub here on the YouTube channel and check out Spotify and Apple Music for the audio side. Also, go to KC Chiefs Corner where you can read everything that he's doing on this team and around the league. NFL 33 and RGR football for my stuff as well. Trades are one way because of, like you said, the limited viability, and obviously you're not going to pick anything up in the waiver wire. Everyone else gets to the trough before you. So one really interesting situation I find, and it's a tough situation because I don't want the Chiefs to have to get into what is a negotiation morass, but I do feel this is less about the player being greedy than it is about the front office of his current team not being prepared. 29 years old. I think he's got a season or two left where he can actually impact the pass game. I don't know what the value is that I'd be willing to give up given that length that I can foresee, but Hassan Reddick does not want to play for the Jets. That's apparent. It's not about the contract anymore, as I understand. He just doesn't want to play for them because they never made any impetus to try to get him under contract, knowing that they were trading for a player whose contract was running out. Would you be interested in the player first, and then at what compensation level second?
That's definitely putting me on the spot for that one. That's compensation is going to be tough. I would expect that to trade for him. I don't know what they're going to have to be able to get for him to be able to be willing to trade him within the same conference. I mean, that's part of the problem is the Jets would look at it and say, well, we're trading them the same conference. We're trading them to Super Bowl, probably the best Super Bowl contender in the AFC for sure, maybe in the NFL. I think that's going to be problem number one. Problem number two is what are you going to pay him and how are you going to pay him? Because yes, they have cap space. That's going to be a problem. But really the reality when you're sitting here looking at it is if you want to pay him and you want to pay him the amount of money that he's probably going to want, I would think you'd have to give him a highly incentive-laden deal. Does he want to come and chase a ring in Kansas City? I'd be okay with it, but I just don't see how they're going to afford it money-wise. He wasn't happy with his contract that he was playing on to begin with, and he's going to want more money. The only way that they can afford to do that is to give him something incentive-laden, and I don't think that they want to sign him to a long-term deal or a couple-season deal even, let's put it that way.
Yeah, so you're out on, say, 2 years that would take him through his 29th and 30th year.
What are you gonna? I mean, how much are you gonna have to pay to do that? That's the big question for me. Like if you're talking about something where he's willing to sign for 2 years, $10 million, that's a different scenario than 2 years, $25 or $30 million, which is closer to what I think probably the value he's expecting is. And I don't see how you get to that value on this team, especially considering you're trying to keep some of your younger players. I'd love the talent.
Well,
that'd be something that'd be a lot of fun, and it would give you a speed rusher you don't currently have on the roster, and it would give you that would make the corner situation even easier because you're getting after the passer quicker, and you would think that would improve what you would need at CB2. I mean, they're not going to have to cover as long, but you're going to have to give up a lot to get him, I would think, money wise.
Well, that's my question to you. What is he worth given the state of the Chiefs' current pass rush set? Because I don't think he's going to get what he wants contractually, and I don't think the Jets are going to get what they want in terms of capital. So I really don't care what they want. I'm setting the market. I'm probably the only one interested. I'm saying this is what I'm willing to give you and willing to pay him. Do you have a ballpark for that? Because I personally feel like if I have to give up that extra third-round pick, I'm probably okay with that right now because of the severity of this season and its impact on history. But again, if it's over 10 mil a season, I'd probably have a little bit more concern about that. If I can get it for 8, I'm doing that. Where are you?
It'd have to be closer to 5, and I'd be okay with 8 or 10 if it was highly incentive. Like you give him, a base of 3 to 5 and give him incentives that could get him there. But again, you're still in a situation where you don't have a ton of money that you can free up, and that gets you close to where you basically are saying that you're not going to sign anybody else to an extension at this point, which is, I think, really where their focus is. I don't think that they're looking at making a big splash trade for something like that, unless the Jets are willing to put up the money and they want the pick. I mean, that's possible too, but I have a hard time seeing that.
Fair enough. A couple of names that I'm going to throw at you then. These would be, I believe they would be wire pickups. I don't know. I have one question about the first one. He doesn't have enough crude. Breland Speaks. Any interest in bringing him back?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think that he's better than what you have on the roster.
Agreed. 29-year-old running back Boston Scott. Now we know that we're thin here. I don't know. That's a free agent pickup, has nothing to do with the waiver wire. Would you pursue that even?
The problem with the running back position, and this is really the issue, is you don't know what they're looking at with CEH, and the team's the only one that knows any idea of what's going on in that position. And obviously you have 2 that are set in Pacheco and Steele. Those 2 are going to be on the roster. We know that. But at that point, it's a question of, is CEH going to be on the roster? If he's on the roster, you don't really have room to bring in a guy like Scott. If you feel like he's better than a guy like Prince, and Prince was going to make the roster and CEH is going to IR, then maybe you make that choice. I don't know that I agree with that, but I can understand why they would want a more veteran presence in the locker room at that position, because they don't have anything right now. And CEH, I guess technically is a veteran in that respect, but he hasn't been in the league that long.
Yeah, that's fair. Joshua Kelly, former Charger, now released, I believe, from the Giants roster.
Probably not. I think I think this roster is getting as close to set as it's going to get. I mean, you have, like I said, a couple of positions that you'd be looking at. DN, maybe, unless there's somebody out there that is going to be somebody that can step in and be a guy that's going to contribute and maybe not necessarily start, but that could take 30 to 40% of your snaps at different positions, then maybe you consider doing it. I just don't think that they're going to be looking for somebody that's going to be a back end of the roster player at this point.
Yeah, fair enough. One more player that I find intriguing. He's never amounted to much. He was a 3rd-round selection by the Patriots back in 2017, and he has not fulfilled his actual, I think, potential in Derek Rivers and edge. I think you could sign him to the practice squad and see what he has to offer. He has made the rounds, I want to say 3 teams in the last couple of years. Did go to the Rams and to Houston in 21, but injury laden, it would just have to be an exploratory signing as far as I'm concerned. Yeah,
and from what I remember, you liked him coming out of the draft. I have no problem with it if they're going to do an exploratory signing, and this is one of those, Veach reclamation projects that maybe they can do, and they can bring him in, and maybe he can contribute. You don't expect much. It's more of a very low risk, high reward type situation, possibly. How high the reward is going to be the big question when you start looking at that. I just don't know that it's going to be there.
Fair enough. That's what I'm interested in so far, folks. A lot of cuts still to come, a lot of options still to come.
Any interest in Denzel Mims? Since we're talking about guys that have been drafted that haven't panned out.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, Justin Ross 3.0. I mean, is that what we're talking about? Because on my evaluations, Mims was the same kind of player. It was catch ball. Everything else was secondary. Can he learn? He hasn't learned. I think with Ross, you've seen progress in this last offseason to where he is now. I don't know that you can afford to keep two of them.
Well, I don't think you have him on the 53. I think if you're looking at that, he has to be a practice squad guy that proves that he can actually do something. Some of these guys, I mean, the bigger problem is depending on where they go, they may not fit the scheme right. There are some GMs and there are some front offices in the league that don't draft that fit exactly what they need on their roster. Kansas City is a little bit different, where they are very clear as to what they're looking for, specifically at pretty much every position, I would say, and they know what they're looking for. And some of the guys that are going to be successful on this roster aren't going to be successful other places because they fit what Kansas City is looking for and how they want their players, the measurements or whatever else can go into it, how they want them to play. So, there is a situation where maybe you can go find somebody it didn't work out somewhere else and they could come to Kansas City and be successful. The big thing is where are you going to put him? Are you going to put him on the roster? Are you going to put him on the practice squad? I mean, right now it's really hard for me to think that they don't have their 53 pretty much. I mean, I think they had their 53 pretty much set headed into the last preseason game. So kicking one of those guys off the roster is going to be hard. But if it's somebody that improves a position of need, then obviously you got to do it. And it's just going to be hard to find those guys this time of year. And I will say this to be clear, I don't think that you're going to go and sign a free agent off the street that hasn't been practicing or doing anything through training camp that's going to be on this roster and help them this year. Because there are some of those guys that we keep getting questions about as well.
There are some long shots to be cut that I think could possibly get to the point where they could be claimed, but I think most of it's either guys that you're taking developmental shots at to get onto the practice squad, see what they can become, or you have to go capture somebody in a trade. So that's what I'm seeing as well. We'd like to know what you're interested in. What should they do? We'll give you some reaction and maybe even put it here into a segment on the show later in the week. Thanks for being with us. Tomorrow, we'll be counting down to roster cuts to see what is happening. And then we will break down absolutely everything that does happen with this roster and practice squad as we move forward. So don't miss it. Make sure you like and sub and hit that bell here on YouTube. Get on the audio side and check out everything that we're doing on our Substacks. He is at KC Chiefs Corner and I am at NFL 33 and RGR Football. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate you spending your time. Enjoy your Monday and get ready for the initial 53-man roster for your Kansas City Chiefs. We will talk to you tomorrow.